But right here, this section right here is raised above this area here. And the distance from here to here in the center of this pan is 3/8 of an inch less than the factory pan. So that's a bad spot. Where the problem is down here. Down here, it's 5/8 of an inch. I'm gonna have to take this brand new panel that should have been made right in the first place, and I'm gonna have to slice this off. We're trying to get rid of rust. We're trying to get rid of old metal, which is why we buy new panels, but we're buying new panels that aren't made right. Hey guys, welcome back. Another episode here on the 67 GTO. Kind of go over what we've been doing. As you can see, I got the whole back of this thing cut off. I got all the old out of here, and just like normal, reproduction parts, not fitting. That's what we're kind of going to go over here. Just want to show you what's going on. Got the new trunk floor sitting in place. It is mounted down. Wheelhouse is back in position, and I went by my marks that were there, and they're pretty close. So that part will go together well. I think the last video I showed the problems with the wheelhouses. One thing I missed, and it's another good thing to pay attention to. If you guys are going to do any of this work as like a pre-assembly, if you want to weld this stuff up like a wheelhouse, you got to be careful. And here's why. This lip, this falls into a pocket here, and this is overhanging. I'm going to have to trim this to be able to get this to fit in here. The problem with doing that as a pre-assembly, if you're not aware that those are not stamped the same, one part is trimmed different than the other, and you weld that together, the part's never going to fit your car. You may get it on there, but the quarter panel won't fit. There's a whole host of problems that you'll run into. So, as I say over and over again, there's a reason this is expensive, is because there's a lot of labor involved. I estimate just to get this rear third of the car back together, I probably have 2 weeks of pre-fitting, putting panels on, marking, removing, putting panels on, marking, removing, and just to get everything gapped right, get everything set right. So I probably got 2 weeks worth of work on this before I can even start to weld one little spot. One of the other issues I ran into with this is a brand new trunk pan, and it's a pretty major issue, and I did find that this is probably true with every other trunk pan that's out there for these 66, 67 GM A bodies. This area right here, and I'll get the camera in a minute and we'll walk around and I'll show you some stuff. But right here, this section right here is raised above this area here. And the distance from here to here in the center of this pan is, roughly 3/8 of an inch less than the factory pan. So that's a bad spot. Where the problem is down here. Down here, it's 5/8 of an inch. So what that means is I'm going to have to take this brand new panel that should have been made right in the first place, and I'm going to have to slice this off. And fortunately for the customer, his original tail panel and his original trunk floor in this area, the trunk floor is good here on his original panel. So I'm going to have to marry a portion of his original trunk floor to this brand new panel. You can look at that two different ways. Hey, at least you can make it work. Well, the problem is, we're trying to get rid of rust. We're trying to get rid of old metal with pitting and surface rust and everything else, which is why we buy new panels, but we're buying new panels that aren't made right. I've already checked. I checked the part number on this, and this is the only fully assembled, welded trunk floor available, one piece with all the bracing, for the 66 through 67 GTO. This is it. This is all that's out there. So this has to be fixed. Now let's look at a scenario where I had mentioned in the last video, where you see a lot of guys, they'll just hack the whole car apart, buy all new sheet metal, and assume that it goes right on. Well, if you assume that, when you went to put your tail panel on, if you welded your tail panel to here, it would never meet your quarter panels. That's 5/8 of an inch right here. So this whole area is just too low. This is too short of a distance. It needs to be raised up. And it's also a little bit too long this way. It's a little bit too long like this, so I'll have to trim it back. Once I lay everything on here, we should be able to make this work pretty good. But what does it mean? It means time and money. All of this means time and money. Other issue I found, the floor brace on this right-hand side here, that floor brace by that wheelhouse also houses the cage nut for the body mount. That mount is either the mount itself, or should be the brace itself, or the cage nut is way out of position. I cannot get the bolt in that side. So I'm going to have to drill that piece. This is, again, brand new trunk floor, fully welded. It's supposed to make things go easier, and it doesn't. So now I have to take this brand new panel, cut it here. I got to drill out all the spot welds and remove that brace, move the cage nut to the position where it's going to work, and then re-weld all that back on there. This is EDP coated front and back, and now I have to grind off the coating to do some welding. And you know, you're just inviting areas of rust in the future. I'll do everything I can to treat the areas, but there's one area you can't treat, and that's right where you weld. You just can't get a coating inside there. So it'll be what it'll be. I say that a lot, but this is what we have to work with. Overall, it's going pretty good. I got the rust fixed in the two corners there that I found. I was able to clean that out. Fortunately, the base metal wasn't bad, just needed a little bit of work. It's cleaned, it's primed, it's ready to accept the new panels. So now I have to work on getting all of this right and the wheelhouse is right before I can move on to the next step, which would be hanging the quarters on here before I can move on to the step after that, which would be putting the tail panel in. So I can cut this off, but I really can't do the tail panel until I have the quarter panels in place, because I need to see where I'm at this way, where I'm at this way, where I'm at this way. So as I mentioned before, measurements, measurements, measurements. You've got to take tons of measurements, and you need to be super careful. If you're going to cut a car apart like this, it's got to be braced. I've got this car braced really well, and you better know what you're doing, because if you go by the assumption that a panel, it just drops right in, it'll be fine, they don't fit. I'm going to walk around here, just show you this real quick, and then I'm going to walk over and show you the pieces I cut off, because boy are they a mess. Now coming over here, you can see I've got an orange line on there. That's what I have to trim off of that outer wheelhouse in order to get it to fit into the pocket of the inner wheelhouse. And we have a little issue up there that I showed you in the last video. The other side's a little more. One of the other issues we're going to have, and it's a problem that the wheelhouse isn't shaped the same. You can see how that brace doesn't meet over in this area. It's the bigger gap. That's because the shape of the wheelhouse doesn't match the shape of the original car. So I'll have to work on that. We'll get that to work. But as you can see here, you can see that raised area, and if you look at it, you can see it's raised in the center, and then it tapers down all the way to here. This is so wrong. When we get over to the other panel, you're going to see it. A blind man should have been able to see that one. Coming over here, just like I said, you can see the spot welds in here for that brace that lives underneath here. I've got to drill that out so that I can get the bolt in, so that I can tie this thing down. This wheelhouse, same deal. You can see again, I got to push it up a little more, but we're going to have the same problem here. We're going to have too big of a gap. I might just do the same thing I'm going to do on that side. I'll probably end up slicing this, bending it down, getting it to match, and then putting a filler piece in here. But it's just the things we got to do. You can see the back's all cut out. I got bracing in there. It's nice and solid. Let's walk over to the rusty pieces on the floor here. There's the trunk floor with the tail panel on it. And if you look, I know it's upside down, but the return is exactly the same. You're just looking at the bottom side of the piece. If you sight down that, look at the difference in height from here to here. And it's pretty uniform all the way down. That piece over there, it kind of went down and went up in the center and came back down again. So we'll have to use this piece. I'll have to cut it back behind here somewhere, behind that brace, and then we'll just have to do a kind of like a lap joint and make it all work. Here's the underside of what's left of the rear package tray. You can see the amount of rust and pitting that was in there. This was hacked up to put speakers in as well. This was all rusted here. That's part of the floor pan that goes up behind the brace. Wheelhouses are a mess. And here's the underside of the rear deck filler panel with your trunk hinges. And you can see how rusty this is. This is what you would see if you looked up underneath. And one thing I want to show you, a lot of guys experience problems with the hinges and the trunk seems to be getting loose. It wobbles a lot. What you end up with is right in here, you can see there's a stress crack in there. Very common on these. As this hinge is moving, it's rocking. The whole piece is rocking and it ends up cracking them. Both sides are cracked. So what I'm going to do on the new piece to prevent that from happening is I'm going to make an extra piece, a support that comes off of here and is welded up here. So instead of just relying on this thin little piece of sheet metal that's bent at a right angle, we're also going to have it welded here, and it's also welded on the backside down over there. But we'll take care of all that. We'll make it real nice for them. It's going to be nice when it's all done. It's just the getting done part is going to take a while to get there. Finding out about this tail panel today, or not, excuse me, that tail panel, that trunk floor was not correct. You know, it was pretty much norm. You know, you hope for the best, you plan for the worst. And even though this isn't an extensive modification, again, we're taking a brand new panel that we shouldn't have to cut up, and I have to cut it up to make it work. Anyway, just wanted to give you that update on this video for the 67 GTO. Next one, I wonder where we'll be at. Hopefully we'll have the package tray installed, or at least mocked up, and the quarter panels mocked up. We'll kind of go through everything as I mock it all up, because I'm going to go through a lot of fasteners to hold this all together before I weld anything. So, like I mentioned before, I'm pretty confident I'll probably have 2 weeks in getting this set right with everything I'm seeing that's just slightly off here and slightly off there. You know, you start stacking up those tolerances, you can end up with a car that's out by a mile when it's all said and done. So we don't want that. We want nice tight gaps. We don't want to have to add material where we shouldn't have just because we rush things. So that's why we don't rush things. Anyway, as always, like, subscribe, questions, comments. If any of you guys have ever done 66, 67 GM A bodies and run into this issue on the full trunk pans, I'm curious if the Chevelles and the Oldsmobiles, if they all have a similar issue where the stamping is wrong back here. But somebody out there can let me know. It'd be great to know. You know, it'd be nice to send an email to the manufacturer, tell them to get their crap together, because we pay a lot of money for this stuff. The customer pays a lot of money for this stuff, not only to purchase it, but to put it in the car. And it would be nice if it was right, or at least close to right. And that, 5/8 of an inch, is not even close to being right. Anyway, stay tuned for more. We'll see you guys.